laying on the hammer to the Minnesota Timberwolves, and Victor Wembanyama really coming back and making a difference in this game. We can go back to the first 6 minutes because I keep pointing to it. He had 16 points, guys, and 5 rebounds. Before we looked up, he was sitting down on the bench and he had already made his statement.
2 nights ago, Victor Wembanyama walked off the court in Minneapolis.
All the criteria has been upgraded to a flagrant foul penalty 2. Wembanyama's been ejected.
For points, an ejection, and an entire arena chanting for him to be thrown out. 2 nights ago in Minneapolis, Victor Wembanyama walked off the floor after officials reviewed an elbow on Naz Reid and hit him with a flagrant 2. It was easily the lowest moment of his young career so far, but less than 48 hours later, Wembanyama responded the way true superstars do. Game 5 started with total domination. Wemby exploded for 18 points in the first quarter alone, completely flipping the energy of the series. By the end of the night, he finished with 27 points, 17 rebounds, 5 assists, and the Spurs rolled to a 29-point win. Just like that, the league got another reminder of what the 7'4" phenomenon from France is actually capable of when he locks in. This is still the same player who opened the series with a 12-block triple-double, the same player who dropped 39 points, 15 rebounds, and 5 assists in Game 3, the reigning Defensive Player of the Year. And honestly, for most of this series, Wembanyama has looked like the best player on the floor. That is what makes Game 5 so important. After Game 4, Minnesota started convincing itself it had discovered the blueprint. The narrative changed instantly after the ejection. Suddenly people were questioning whether Wemby could handle playoff basketball. Could he deal with the physicality? Could a 22-year-old survive this kind of pressure? The Timberwolves believed they had found a weakness. And to be fair, Game 4 looked rough. Wembanyama had never been ejected before in his career. He finished with only 4 points, the lowest scoring game he has ever had at any level professionally. Minnesota took advantage and grabbed a 114-109 victory to even the series. For a moment, it felt like momentum had completely shifted. But inside San Antonio, the message was very different. Spurs coach Mitch Johnson openly talked about how physical Minnesota had been throughout the series. According to Johnson, the Timberwolves were constantly grabbing Wembanyama, bumping him off for bounds, and turning every possession into a wrestling match. De'Aaron Fox even said Wemby's arm was being held before the elbow incident happened. Rookie guard Dylan Harper added that it looked like Wembanyama had simply reached a breaking point after being targeted physically all night. And honestly, when you step back and watch the series closely, Minnesota's strategy becomes obvious. This has never been about outskilling San Antonio. The Timberwolves are trying to overwhelm them physically. Jaden McDaniels and Naz Reid have been battling Wemby on every rebound, constantly leaning on him, fighting for position, and trying to make every touch uncomfortable. The goal is simple: wear him down mentally and physically over the course of a 7-game series. The problem for Minnesota is that Game 5 proved something terrifying. Wembanyama did not crack. He adjusted. He responded. And now the pressure shifts completely heading into Game 6 because the Spurs superstar just reminded everyone that even when things get ugly, he is still capable of completely taking over a playoff game on both ends of the floor.
Bryant off on the 3. Wembanyama.
Goodness.
He comes the rebound.
Oh, that's an elbow. That's an elbow by Victor.
And we got a tie up with Daniels.
And in Game 4, that strategy worked once, which had Minnesota believing they finally found a blueprint to slow down Victor Wembanyama. You could feel that confidence early in Game 5. The Timberwolves came out just as physical, trying to recreate the same pressure that frustrated him in Minneapolis. They wanted Wemby thinking about the ejection, the crowd, and the chaos from Game 4. But 18 first-quarter points erased that idea instantly. Wembanyama went 6-4, 8 from the field, and hit 2 of his first 3 from deep. Before the first quarter even ended, Minnesota's so-called formula already looked completely useless.
Wembanyama, shades of Jay crossover right here, the little spin move.
Now sit with that for a second, because if you are Chris Finch, that is the moment panic starts creeping in. You spend an entire series building a defensive strategy. Convince yourself you finally figured out Victor Wembanyama, and then he drops 18 points in the first quarter alone. That is when reality hits. Minnesota thought Game forgave them the blueprint, but Game 5 immediately exposed how fragile that confidence really was. And honestly, the biggest statement was not even the scoring outburst. It came later, when the Timberwolves tried bringing back the same physical tactics from Game 4. With about 2.5 minutes left in the first half, Naz Reid shoved Wembanyama in the back during a free throw sequence and was hit with a technical foul, reigniting the tension all over again.
And Jamal kind of highlighted this. It starts with Anthony Edwards. He's got to get off the ball quicker. I think this is going to be a technical foul on Naz Reid.
This right here was the moment that defined the entire game. Honestly, maybe the entire series. Because what Naz Reid did in that sequence was almost identical to the kind of contact that triggered Victor Wembanyama's ejection in Game 4. Different possession, same strategy. Get physical. Get under his skin. See if he loses control again. Minnesota wanted to know whether Game 4 exposed a weakness or just caught Wemby in a rare emotional moment. The Timberwolves were testing him. And this time, Wembanyama gave them the perfect answer without saying a single word. He did not shove back. He did not argue. He did not even react emotionally. He walked to the line, calmly knocked down the free throw, and immediately got back to work. That response said everything Minnesota needed to hear. Push me, grab me, talk all you want. I'm still going to play basketball, and I'm still going to beat you. That is maturity. That is growth. And honestly, that is what should scare the Timberwolves most heading into Game 6. Because the stat that truly explains this game is not the 27 points or the 17 rebounds. It is the number one personal foul. That is it. One foul in an entire playoff game where Minnesota spent almost every possession trying to drag him into a physical war. The Wolves were bumping him constantly in the post, grabbing him on rebounds, leaning on him in transition, and making sure every catch felt uncomfortable. Reid even told him to hit the weight room after overpowering him on one play. Anthony Edwards was chirping. Jaden McDaniels kept pressing him physically on every possession. It was the exact same atmosphere that exploded in Game 4. Only this time, Wembanyama never cracked. That is the real reminder he gave Minnesota in Game 5. The frustrated version they saw in Minneapolis was never the real story. That was the exception. This is the actual version of Wemby, the defensive player of the year. The 7'5" nightmare who led the league in blocks, contested shots, and defensive impact. Minnesota thought they found a blueprint. Instead, they just woke him up. And while Wemby completely controlled the emotional side of the game, the Spurs roster around him finally delivered the support needed to turn this into a blowout. That part matters because Game 4 quietly showed something important. Even after Wembanyama got ejected, San Antonio still fought hard. They actually led by 8 points in the fourth quarter without their superstar. The Spurs did not collapse immediately. Minnesota still had to earn that one late behind huge plays from Edwards, Reid, and the rest of the Wolves. So Game 5 was not just about Wemby bouncing back. It was about the entire Spurs roster responding together. Keldon Johnson came off the bench and gave San Antonio a massive spark with 21 points on 8-4-11 shooting. De'Aaron Fox added 18 points and 5 assists while playing under complete control all night. Stephon Castle continued his breakout series with 17 points and 6 assists, looking more confident every single game. And rookie Dylan Harper delivered 12 points and 10 rebounds while making veteran-level plays under pressure. That is what transformed this from a strong response into a complete demolition. Minnesota wanted an ugly, physical series. They wanted to test the young superstar emotionally and mentally. But Game 5 proved something they probably did not want to learn. Wembanyama is adjusting faster than they are. And now heading into Game 6, the pressure suddenly feels very different because the Spurs superstar just reminded everybody that when he stays composed, locked in, and supported by the roster around him, this matchup becomes a completely different problem for the Timberwolves.
As his fifth, so Spurs 5.
Oh! Whoa! That young kid is going to be a star.
Yep.
He looked like his dad on that highlight tape we showed earlier.
But the real number, the stat that defined the entire night more than any individual performance, was points in the paint. San Antonio outscored Minnesota 68-36 inside. Read that again. A Timberwolves team built around rim protection and physical defense got completely dominated at the basket. This is a roster featuring Rudy Gobert, a 4-time Defensive Player of the Year, Naz Reid, one of the league's most versatile big men, Jaden McDaniels, one of the better switchable defenders in basketball, and yet San Antonio lived in the paint all night long. That was not just a Victor Wembanyama stat either. That was a complete team effort. Everybody attacked downhill. Everybody finished through contact. The Spurs kept crashing the offensive glass, cutting hard to the rim, and pushing the pace in transition until Minnesota's defense finally cracked. And honestly, the most impressive part came after the Timberwolves made their run. Early in the third quarter, Minnesota exploded with a 14-2 burst and erased an 18-point deficit. That is usually the exact moment a young playoff team panics. Most inexperienced rosters fold when momentum completely flips against them on the road. But San Antonio never blinked. Keldon Johnson responded by blocking Gobert at the rim, then came right back down the floor, bullied Anthony Edwards under the basket, and knocked down a short jumper. Instead of backing down from Minnesota's physicality, the Spurs answered it with even more force of their own.
Randall popping free. Corner pitch, Shannon. Off the bench, can't hit. Gobert. Johnson. Off Gobert.
That is what growth looks like. That is a young team learning in real time. The Spurs took everything that happened in Game 4, absorbed it, and made sure Minnesota was not going to win another game the same way. Victor Wembanyama reminded the Timberwolves exactly who he is, and the rest of San Antonio reminded them who they are as a team. Put those two things together, and that is why this game was effectively over long before the fourth quarter ended. So now the pressure shifts completely heading into Game 6 because Minnesota suddenly has a very real problem. In a playoff series, teams usually get 2 or maybe 3 genuine adjustments before the matchup starts revealing what it truly is. The Timberwolves' first adjustment was physicality, and Wembanyama handled that in 3 of the 5 games. Their second adjustment was trying to rattle him emotionally, and that worked exactly 1 time. Right now, they do not appear to have a third answer, and Wemby just forced them to find one immediately. 27 points, 17 rebounds, 5 assists, 3 blocks, 1 personal foul. That stat line does not happen by accident. That is the performance of a player who completely understood what the opponent wanted from him emotionally and refused to give it to them. That is why this felt less like a statement game and more like a reminder. Messages are loud. Messages are for cameras and headlines. Reminders are different. They stay with the opponent long after the final buzzer. Every player on Minnesota's roster is going to walk into Game 6 remembering they just lost by 29 points in a game where the defensive blueprint they believed in completely collapsed against them. That is not just a loss. That is doubt creeping into a series. And if you are a Spurs fan right now, the focus has to be simple. Finish the job. This team is already past the point of proving it belongs. San Antonio earned its place here. They finished with one of the league's best defenses, won 62 games, and never looked like a fluke team sneaking through the playoffs. This roster has grown up fast, and now it is 1 win away from something massive. Game 6 in Minneapolis is going to be chaos. The crowd will be loud. The Timberwolves will throw everything they have left at this series, and the Spurs are going to need one more composed performance under pressure. But if they get it, this changes everything. A trip to the Western Conference Finals for the first time since the Kawhi Leonard era. A 22-year-old superstar leading the franchise into a new chapter. And a reminder to the rest of the league that San Antonio's future may have arrived much sooner than anyone expected.